Last but not least, now that we have a better understanding of what all incorporates and what is seen through behavior therapy from the beginnings of its historical background and its involvement with various leaders and figures to techniques and interventions and ideas that it presents, we now need to understand the strengths and weaknesses of the therapy itself. With all therapies come strengths and limitations as well. So there are many that we could look at now, but just to name a few, some strengths of behavior therapy is that it is a versatile and comprehensive approach to therapy. It is a very diverse approach to therapy where it includes all ages, adults, adolescents, children, in very diverse and versatile places such as schools, offices, prisons, wherever you can think of. It's a very versatile and flexible approach to therapy. A second strength is it is a concrete and specific approach to therapy that focuses on particular behavioral goals set by the client and how to achieve them using the most empirically supported and effective behavioral and cognitive behavior interventions. It is an accountable and focused therapy where the goals can be reached in a measurable way. Another strength of this type of therapy is that it primarily addresses current environmental situations and problems or symptoms of the client without emphasis or making specific behavioral changes according to the goals and needs of the client as presented to the therapist in the beginning. It also emphasizes client choice. The client has the right to make the choice in setting the goals that they want to receive during therapy. And although it is not an existential approach to therapy like reality therapy or existential therapy, it makes one's freedom to choose. And in this way, it becomes a very authentic and responsible approach to therapy for clients. It also is open to the use of psychiatric medications, whereas a lot of other therapies are not open to the use of medications. This therapy has realized the sometimes needed combination of treatments for certain clinical problems. Other strengths is that it has a unique approach that offers a very wide range or array of therapeutic interventions and techniques to help the client in different ways and in different behavioral treatments. It also takes the empirical research very seriously and subjects its techniques and therapeutic interventions to controlled outcome studies as much as possible. It heavily relies on research to support its theories and techniques and interventions and so on. It also has been easily used with clients from different cultures. It is a very well used behavioral therapy process for multicultural settings or countries because it is open to a wide range of behavioral techniques according to the individual. Although it does have all of these strengths, which are very good, it also has its limitations and weaknesses at the same time. So let's take a few minutes to look at some of the weaknesses we can see through this type of therapy. Well, first, it tends to treat symptoms and problems rather than focus on the holistically or the whole of the individual, which in therapy or therapeutic processes, we do want to see an overall improvement of the entire individual. So this is one limitation you could see through the behavior because it's only focusing on the behavior and not the individual as a whole. Secondly, behavior therapists emphasize their techniques and empirically supported interventions more than the therapeutic relationship with clients. Although this, as we talked about earlier, the client and therapist relationship is important, At the same time, within this type of therapy, it is less emphasized than other therapies you may take a look at. Another weakness or limitation is that it does not adequately focus on the past and its unresolved issues or painful memories, which, as therapists or counselors, we do know that everything an individual may be going through is a combination of their current environment as well as past and things that have been a part of their lives for a very long time, and it is important to find answers and seek through those unresolved issues they may still have. So once again, we see a limitation in maybe not emphasizing too much on the past events of the individual that could be affecting it or affecting them today. Fifthly, their behavioral therapy does not actively deal with existential issues which some clients may be struggling with, such as seeking meaning in life, choosing authentic values, trying to find a belief system, or overcoming the fear of death, for example. There also is a directive and systematic approach to therapy in which the behavior therapist functions as a coach, a trainer, a teacher, or consultant. Also, these techniques can be simplistically and easily misused. When using behavior as a type of therapy, it can very much be used out of context of what that individual may need. It can be improperly used. It can be used where behavioral therapy, because it could be misused abusively in some ways, whether it is physical or just the misuse of a behavioral therapy technique that does not apply to that client. Another weakness is that it can be adapted for effective use with clients from other cultures and countries. It may still not be sensitive enough to the larger social, political, and environmental context. So at the same time, we saw multicultural being a strength. At times, it could also be seen as a weakness or a limitation in some ways. Not only do we want to focus on the overall general strengths and weaknesses, we do need to understand, as Christian counselors, the biblical perspective in using this type of behavioral therapy, which also is important to take a look at the strengths and weaknesses from a biblical perspective. For instance, behavioral therapy or behavior modification in its earlier version was more deterministic and naturalistic in its basic philosophy, which followed Skinner's views in this type of therapy, which had no place for human free will, which as Christians we know and believe that we have the choice to choose. We have free will. Secondly, behavior therapy's emphasis on environmental control on human behavior and the points of conditioning, including operant conditioning or reinforcement contingencies, is a good reminder of how human beings are not totally free, even as creatures made in the image of God, the Creator. And so being human means that our nature also has an animal side that is subject to conditioning to a certain extent. So in some ways, coming from whichever Christian perspective you may be coming from, that may be seen as a strength or weakness. Thirdly, behavior therapists' empowerment of clients to choose their own goals based on their own values and good corrective to the potential danger of imposing therapist values and goals on the client, because behavior therapy is such a directive approach to therapy. So we have to be careful in this type of therapy. On the other hand, however, ultimate values from a biblical perspective can only come from God, as we all know, and in His inspired word. So it doesn't come from the therapist, it comes from God. Another thing that we should look at from a biblical perspective is that behavioral therapy's focus on powerful and effective techniques of behavior change can result in not only self-efficacy, but also sinful self-sufficiency. and overdependency on one's skills to cope effectively with the problems in one's life. So it may in some ways promote self-centeredness, where we rely on ourselves to seek the answers we need instead of relying on God, who is the only one who can give us the real answers that we are seeking. And there are many, many other biblical perspectives and strengths and weaknesses we could look at, but one more I'd like to share is finally behavior therapy. Its hallmark of subjecting its techniques to controlled outcome research and using empirically supported therapeutic intervention is a strength that can be appreciated. However, from a biblical perspective, empirical support cannot be accepted as the ultimate criteria for using specific behavioral therapeutic techniques. A Christian therapist will not simply use whatever works. A Christian therapist is going to use and be led by the Spirit. They have gone through education and they have learned these techniques and they know what works. They know, or they may not know what all works, but at the same time, they are relying on Him, the one who gives us all direction, which is something that as Christian counselors or therapists, we have to continually be aware of, that God is the one leading us and directing us in this field, that we can properly reach those and help guide those that He has set in our path. Thank you.